From crisis counselling to co-founding 2 social impact organisations, Leonie Sanderson harnesses the power of psychology to challenge ageism and transform how we think about getting older. Professionally Psyched is the podcast that brings you cutting-edge psychology research and real-world insights from our psych community of clinicians, researchers and educators alike. In our special alumni spotlights, we chat to graduates from our psychology degree programs about how their skills learned in the classroom have become powerful tools supporting diverse career journeys and successes. Hi everyone and welcome to Professionally Psyched. I'm Jessica Muller, PhD candidate in Public Health at James Cook University, and before we get started we'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we record, and for me today that's the Bindal and Wulgurukaba peoples. And I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and cultures from wherever you may be tuning in from across the country. In this alumni spotlight, Dr. Amanda Krause chats with Leonie Sanderson about her journey from JCU psychology graduate to co-CEO of the Aging Revolution and People Tech Revolution. She shares how understanding research techniques and statistics helps her translate complex information, while her lecturer's advice about values became her career North Star. So grab your headphones and get ready to get professionally psyched about using the so what question to create powerful stories and build bridges across our increasingly divided world. Enjoy.
Leonie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. And to get started, would you be able to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name's Leonie Sanderson. I went to JCU sort of the mid to late 80s to 1990, which is when I did my degree. So I'm among that sort of early cohort of psychology graduates. I'm co-CEO of 2 organisations that I have co-founded with my partner Simon, and that's the Aging Revolution and People Tech Revolution. And the Aging Revolution has a really strong focus on ageing and challenging ageism, and it's the one that kind of kicked us off in the profit for purpose area, I guess, where we do a lot of work around social impact and looking at how we can challenge people's ideas around ageing. And then People Tech Revolution grew out of that. And what we do there is we look at how we can use technology to also challenge ageism, but also all the other isms. So racism, anything around gender, anything around sexism, all of these things that crop up in our life all of the time and that we've all had to deal with one way or another, and we use technology as a solution in that area.
Excellent. I wondered if you might take a step back and think for us how you maybe have moved from graduation to being able to co-found and run these 2 organizations, because I imagine there might have been a few steps in between.
Yeah, lots and lots and lots of steps in between. So when I graduated, I left Townsville and moved to Sydney. And I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my degree. So I had an interest in clinical psychology, but I wasn't sure if I was really, cut out for it personality-wise. So I managed to get 2 jobs in Sydney. One was counselling in a women's health centre. So I was doing crisis counselling. And the other job was a research assistant in the Department of Community Medicine at University of Sydney. And for me, they were really foundational. What I learnt was I didn't really want to do clinical psychology. But what I also learnt was that counselling opened me up to the breadth of humanity. So being a crisis counsellor in a women's health centre in the middle of inner city Sydney, we saw everybody from all walks of life experiencing all sort of different sorts of crisis. And that really, I think, set the tone for me for a lot of the work that I've done since then. It really set me on a path of going, well, I want to do things that make a difference to people. And so I'd got a little bit sick of living in Sydney, and then I decided that I was going to, even though I was like 3 or 4 years post degree, I applied for a graduate program with the Australian Public Service, and I got accepted. I moved to Canberra and I started working in the public sector. Also quickly worked out the public sector was not necessarily exactly where I wanted to be, and I moved pretty quickly into the not-for-profit sector, into the consumer health area. So I still still with a focus on health, still with a focus on advocacy, and still looking at how I can help people to make better lives, really. I think that my degree had really, it really helped me. And I didn't start off doing psychology when I went to uni. I actually did 2 years of science before I realized that that really wasn't what I wanted to do, that it was something social and people focused that I was interested in. I worked in a couple of different not-for-profits in that health space. I, as you do, took off overseas, spent a few years living overseas, working, teaching English, doing all sorts of different things. Eventually came back to Australia and went into the disability sector and then the public sector again. And this time at the state level, not at the federal level. So I kind of got into the policy area, and that was actually something that really, really engaged me a lot. And I ended up working in any of those offices that you can think of that are to do with people. So the Office for Volunteering, the Office for Seniors, the Office for Carers, Office for Youth, Office for Women, all of these kind of very, demographic kind of driven social policy areas. And I did that for about 10 or 15 years and worked on policies, worked across government, worked across all levels of government, so local, state and federal, to kind of push through change in these different areas. That is what led me to creating my own organisation. So I think after a little while in government, maybe I started to get a little bit disillusioned with am I actually making any change here? And that's kind of when I went, actually, maybe I can do something better just by going out on my own. And, that took a little while to find the right people to partner with. So I think that was really important for me. It was something I didn't think I could just do on my own. I needed some extra skills and extra expertise in different areas. But once that kind of all aligned, then it was really easy to pull together that departure from government and start doing my own thing.
That's incredible. And what a great way of following your interests and passions and developing those skills, but still, I think, recognizing that it takes a team to do some of these things.
Yeah, it really does. And I think the other thing is you don't want to burn out. So when you've found your own organization or your own business, you do everything. So it's really important to have the right people around you. And, I think you're always looking for who can do your job better than you. And if you can find those people, then you want them on your side, I think.
Yeah, certainly. Could you tell us a little bit more about sort of what your day-to-day responsibilities are in your role with either the aging revolution and or the people tech revolution?
Sure. So a lot of calendar management. And so in the last couple of years, which is great, we've got a small team for People Tech Revolution. But what I find is that the day-to-day is always really it's always quite different. So we do have regular meetings with our team. So what we like to do is have a stand-up on a Monday where we do come together and kind of just try and keep it a really, really short meeting about what's going on for the week. So we all know what are the priorities for us. That's important for us because we work remotely. So the team is remote. We have people in our team who are in New South Wales, people who are in Queensland, people who are in Vietnam, and also a floating member who kind of travels the world. So, for us to be able to have that stand up, it's useful for us to just kind of know what people are doing and where they're at. The middle of the week meeting, which is everybody comes to, is our check-in. It's how is everyone doing? Are you like a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Or are you like a one up, one down? Or how are you going? What's capturing your attention this week? What are the things that are happening in your life, in your world this week? We'll usually my partner Simon and I will usually give a quick update about, what's going on work-wise. But really that's our time to be able to just come together and do a bit of team building and share as a team and understand what's going on for people in their daily life, in their personal world, because working on your own remotely can be kind of isolating. The other thing that we do is we use Discord, which is a little bit like Slack or, those kinds of communication tools. We use that a lot to communicate with everybody. I guess that asynchronous communication, sometimes people's time zones don't always line up, but it means that we can kind of talk to people and then come back to an answer and see what's going on as well. In terms of work, I'm really lucky in that I don't have to do the whole sales pitch stuff. So that's Simon, my partner, because he's much better at that. He's very good at doing the sales and sales pitches. So for him, he does a lot of talking on the telephone and talking to people on video calls. For me, it's more about pulling together the resources that support the different work that we do, project coordination, making sure everybody's working together, making sure that that we're meeting deadlines if we've got them with a client, that a little bit of that client management, that kind of thing. So that's probably where I probably have most of my focus.
And were there any skills or knowledge that you gained through your degree at JCU that you find really helpful in your current role?
Yeah, look, I think when you're at uni, I think you can be so young. And I was straight out of high school and went straight to university. And I think I was pretty naive and I didn't really know much about the world. But I was like a bit of a social justice warrior at the time. I think if I look back, I was like, women's rights and the women's room and all those kinds of things were definitely part of my day-to-day at university. I think for my degree, one of the things that I really remember was during one of our counselling lectures, the lecturer said, if you don't understand your own values, you can't provide good counselling or good service to the people that you're working with. And that's really stuck with me over the years because I've just found it to be true again and again and again and again and again. I really reflect on that. And at the time I was like, what do you mean? Can't you just counsel anybody? I don't feel any bias towards people, but of course we do. And I think just taking that little piece of advice and putting it into action in all of the different roles that I've done over the last, 30 something years has been a really helpful thing for me. Just to know my values, to know where my boundaries are, or where, what I can and can't do, what I can and can't influence, and what I would feel comfortable doing or not comfortable doing. And I think that has been like what do you call it? Like a guide, like a North Star for me.
Yeah. I'm curious about, you said when you had graduated that one of the roles you jumped into had research as part of it. And I wondered if you could speak more to sort of how that may have shaped how you thought about using your psychology degree.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I think that's probably one of the other things that's really been really important with the degree. So coming from the couple of years of science and then going into psychology and science graduates will always joke about that psychology is not a real, science. But I think that the thing that I've found is actually having had that psych background and having to do stats and having to study statistics and understand whether that more pure research and looking at what's significant and what's not significant has actually been really useful to me over the years, whether it's in a policy role. So in policy, especially in evidence-based policy, which I think most governments like to think that they base their policies on evidence and research, but that's actually been really useful for me to be able to talk to researchers and understand what they're talking about and be able to kind of almost translate it for somebody who might not understand it, because I think that's also the role of somebody in policy, is to do some of that translation. I think in that first job, I was really, really lucky that the role that I went into was community medicine, and I was supporting 3 or 4 projects. They were around communications. So it was around communication skills for medical students, looking at general practice consultations and how they flow. So I got a really good sense during that job of action research, of using focus groups. I had to do focus groups with GPs in the broader metropolitan area in Sydney. And if you've ever done focus groups, you know, like that they can be a bit tricky. But when you throw GPs into the mix, it's even more tricky because they're quite individualistic human beings and they're very opinionated. So it was like such a steep learning curve for me, but also really, really useful. And I think the degree had given me some of those skills around counselling and understanding research techniques that were also really useful in that role. So those things have, I think, informed the work that I've done over time as well, and given me the confidence to feel like I understand what I'm talking about when I talk to a researcher or an academic, that I'm not in the dark, and I don't have to feel baffled or not confident about what I'm talking about.
One of the things you mentioned there was this idea of translation, and we talk about science communication, of effectively using language and communicating these ideas to an audience that understand them. And I wondered if you had any tips or tricks that you've developed along the way to provide a little bit of advice for our listeners.
Look, I think storytelling is the thing that changes everything. So if we want to make change, we have to get really good at storytelling. And that means we have to understand, you know, like we can't overwhelm people with lots and lots of information. So I would say one of the things I like to do is go, well, what are the 3 key things that we want to talk to people about? What do we want to tell them? And no more than 3 things, maybe even less, but 3 max. And then I really like to ask the so what question, you know, like, so whatever it's about. Volunteering is really good for you. So what? Well, it means that, you know, like not only are we contributing to the community, but we're actually getting a benefit ourselves. So what? Like we need to ask the so what question to hone our narrative and to hone our storytelling. And I think that would be my biggest tip. Use the so what question. It works on everything. It works on anything. If you're doing text for a website, if you're doing copy for anything at all, if you're doing advertising, if you're trying to sell a policy, if you're trying to write something that's concise, ask the so what question, because it makes a difference.
I think that's great. So what do you see as a big issue in the world that you inhabit now? And maybe how do you think that the next generation of psychology graduates might contribute to that issue?
Oh, that's a really good question. There's so much going on right now. People Tech Revolution has done a lot of work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, which obviously at the moment is kind of experiencing a lot of backlash, not just in the United States, but the fact that it's happening in the United States influences the rest of the world. So I think that there is definitely still room for work to be done around how we communicate better with each other around these issues. Maybe it's around identity, maybe it's around how do we like come together in a really diverse world and express our ideas without getting angry with each other. I think that's really important. What are the things that drive unity, not division? And I think psychology has a lot to contribute to that. And I would love to see more work or work continue to be done in that space. You know, radical transformation. How do we talk to people about things that are really uncomfortable? How do we do that? How do we do that in our everyday life? How do we have those conversations with our friends and our family when we have a really different perspective to them?
And I think that's a great point, that it's also in people's professional worlds as well as in their day-to-day personal interactions where we can see that that really has an impact.
I was doing a training and we use a really simple tool, conversation tool. How are you talking to other people? How are you having those conversations with your friends and your family and your colleagues? How do you show up in the world? And I think those things probably matter more than ever at the moment.
I agree. Leonie, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. It's been lovely chatting with you.
Thanks, Amanda. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to Professionally Psyched. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the ongoing support of our Psych community. If you'd like to show your support or if you want us to cover anything on the pod, reach out via our emails, and don't forget you can listen to full episodes on Spotify.